Nuestra, Señora de la Noche by Mayra Santos-Febres. She's a Puerto Rican author. I read a history book about Puerto Rico. I wanted to read this one. I didn't actually fully read this book. I read most of the sections about Isabel and her son's madrina. To be honest, I was not in the mood for some of it. I had just read this entire history book about Puerto Rico. So the parts that were political, I was like, ugh. The parts that were written by a man, I was like, ugh. I've read this author before, and there's a quality about her writing that I really like. I like when she writes about these relationships, and especially between and among women. There's just a certain feel to her writing that I like, and I wanted to read something by a woman after reading this history book, so certain parts of it I didn't like. I just wasn't in the mood for. This is not in Spanish on Kindle. So I have the book, and I usually give my books away right after I read them, but since I didn't fully read this one, I'm keeping it because I'm going to read it fully someday. I just am not in the mood for it right now. And then I'm like, I want to read about everything going on in Venezuela. I was like ready to read about Venezuela anyway, so I'm on to Venezuela, but I'm going to read this book fully. Let's see. I like the setting of this book. I like her writing style, of course. Historical fiction, although I just finished a history book about Puerto Rico, so I was not in the mood for some of it. However, it's a historical fiction book, which I love, and I love the setting, and I'm like, I'm just not in the mood for it, but I would probably like to read this book. It's conflicting to read about a woman who abandons her newborn baby and decides to run a business, specifically a brothel. Although during that time, sex and alcohol were probably, in her opinion, the best option for her. And she was also in this just like postpartum state. She had just had a baby with this white man, and he was wealthy and married, and like he got married right as she was having a baby. And then she's like, oh, her uterus, she has a tilted uterus, so she's like, even my uterus is upside down. And I'm like, well, it's impossible for your uterus to be upside down. But that's just her mindset and the way she felt at the time. So I don't want to say, oh, it's understandable that you abandon your baby. It's just, not every book I read because I want to judge the character's decisions, okay? I actually liked it. I liked the book, and there's a lot to it. It's not a book you read if you want to judge somebody or you want to see the character make the best decision. You just read the book to read the book, okay? There's a lot to it. There's a lot going on in it. Lots of different things like class, race, social norms, societal norms at that time and everything. Yeah, but I was like, she is a seamstress. Her mother didn't raise her. So she was at the river one day, and her madrina, she's like, oh, there's your mom over there. Her mom went to go work in the fields and left her to be raised by her madrina. And so in a way it's normal. It's kind of like she didn't even want to see her baby. She heard him crying, and she's like, it ripped her apart. She's like, I don't even want to see him, which makes me sad, honestly. But she was raised by somebody else, so she's thinking he'll be raised by somebody else. But then she decides to have this man that he knows that he gave her a baby, right? And then he goes and gets married, but he gives her a little piece of land, right, that's connected to his land, and she opens a brothel on it. But I'm like, you really missed the opportunity to, you're this amazing seamstress, to make suits for men and tailor them, right? And then be like, this is your handsome son who lives on your property, basically, by the way. And then, like, what is that like? Like, that actually has happened in history where this woman and her husband, they live on this property, and she's like, by the way, who's that woman that you gave a random piece of property to who has a son that looks like you? Then he'd be like, guys, do we have any insane asylums? Not to it that also I would love to discuss this in like a book group. But yeah, I'm like, you missed this opportunity. You have a piece of property, raise your son on the property. But it just was her state of mind at the time, and it's just, you don't read the book to judge the people. You just read the book you just read the story, and it's not my story that I wrote anyway. Yeah, but there are some parts of it I just wasn't in the mood for, so I'm gonna read it again someday. Let's see. yeah, I wanted to just go ahead and write a review. That's my quick review of it, but that's a limited review because I didn't read all of the parts by like some of, like the guy in college. I'm like, I don't want to read about this guy in college. And then I had just read about Puerto Rico. So when they start to talk about, talk about these political divisions, I'm like, I do not want to read about those right now, but it's pertinent to the story. Yeah, I'll read this book in full someday, but I wanted to go ahead and write a review for now. Nuestra, Señora de la Noche by Mayra Santos-Febres.